on punctuation marks. In this class, I'm going to be teaching you what punctuation is all about. Now, to start with, what are punctuation marks? Simply put, punctuation marks are symbols or marks that are used to mark off elements in the sentence to present meaning to the reader of that sentence. Or better put, punctuation marks are used in writing to separate sentences and the elements and to clarify meaning. Punctuation marks are also referred to as pauses. Now, we have categories of punctuation marks. Basically, there are two in number, and they are the permanent pauses. Remember, I told you that punctuation marks are also called pauses. So we have permanent pauses, and we have temporary pauses. Now, the permanent pauses are three in number. A permanent pause basically is used to show finality. There are three in number. They are the full stop or period, the exclamation mark, and the question mark. Now, the full stop is also called period, is a permanent pause. It is used to end a sentence that is a statement. For example, I'll be going to the zoo tomorrow. It's a statement, so you end with a full stop. So the full stop is an example of a permanent pause. Now, the full stop is used at the end of a sentence. Like I said, a sentence that is declarative, a sentence that is a statement. Now look at these examples here. There is no place like home. You end with a full stop because that is a declarative sentence. Love makes the world go round. You end with a full stop because that is a declarative sentence. A full stop is also used after titles in American English, so it's not very compulsory. In British English, is optional. That is the use of a full stop after a title. Basically, it is practiced in American English. Now, example, he owes a lot of money to Mr. Smith. So you have a full stop after Mr., which is the title that comes before Smith. Dr. Smith instructs us in botany. So doctor comes before the full stop. The full stop shows that that's the title, at the same time an abbreviation. The full stop is also used in numbers. Now we have the question mark, which is the other permanent pause. The question mark is used to ask a question like the name goes. The question mark is used at the end of a direct question. For example, he should quit smoking, shouldn't he? Now, if a question mark is part of an italicized or underlined title, you must make sure that the question mark is also italicized. For example, my favorite book is Where Did He Go? So where did he go is italicized there. So the question mark should also be italicized with the italicized title of the book or italicized expression. Now when the question mark or when the question ends with an abbreviation, you must end the abbreviation with a period and then add a question mark. For example, did he used to live in Washington, D.C.? So D.C. ends with a full stop before the question mark is applied. Now the exclamation mark or the exclamation point is the third permanent pause. And this is the symbol of the exclamation mark. Now, there are some guidelines in using the exclamation mark. One is that you use as a safe check. You use one at a time. Don't put two exclamation marks together. You use alone. Use honestly. And don't always use the exclamation mark indiscriminately. That means you have to use it sparingly, not excessively. Now let's look at the temporary pauses. The first one is the comma. Now the comma is a mark that indicates a pause that is temporary, or that indicates that a pause is needed in a sentence for that sentence to make meaning. So the comma or commas generally help to clarify meaning for the reader. Commas can also make the sentence easier. Generally, basically, the comma makes the sentence easier to understand. If you make a sentence in a long stretch without breaking some elements, the long stretch may mislead the reader of that sentence. Now let's look at some examples of sentences where you have the comma. She gave me 2 pens, a pencil, and an eraser. You notice that the comma is used to mark off pencil, is used to mark off the 2 pens. And now when you have a series of commas, the last comma is referred to as the Oxford comma. It's not always compulsory. Now the Oxford comma is the last comma in the series of commas, and it normally comes before and or before EDC. But like I said, it is not compulsory. Now, so that shows that the question mark is used to mark off items in a list. And look at another example. When I saw his face, I recognized him immediately. Now, the question, the comma there is used to mark off the first clause, which is the subordinate clause, from the main clause. Now you can rearrange the sentence to bring the main clause before the subordinate clause. So when the main clause comes before the subordinate clause, you don't need a comma. But when the subordinate clause comes before the main clause, the comma is used to mark off the subordinate clause from the main clause. Now the next one is a semicolon. There's a symbol of a semicolon there. You have a dot and a comma under the dot. Now, when we use a semicolon, the semicolon is used to make the gap between 2 sentences smaller. For example, let's go to the library to study. It's the only place where I can fully concentrate. So the semicolon is used there to make the gap between those 2 sentences smaller. The semicolon is also used to introduce a complete sentence with words such as however, nevertheless, therefore, for example. These words are actually called adverbial connectors or linkers. For example, Lucy doesn't pay enough attention to her university studies. For example, she loiters about and all that. Now, the colon is also a temporary pause. The colon is a dot up, another dot down. Now, what we use the colon for? The colon is used to introduce a list of items or to introduce a list. For example, I am teaching the following classes next semester. So you put a colon there. Irish literature, composition 2, and creative writing. So that list is introduced with a colon. So a colon is used to introduce a list of items or a list of whatever it is. Now, the colon is also used to elaborate on a statement. For example, my classmates and I all agree we will need to reread chapter 3 before the test this week. So the second sentence elaborates on the first sentence, and that is made possible with the use of the colon. Now, let me quickly clear a controversy here. It is often misconstrued that when a colon is used, whatever expression comes after the colon begins with a small letter. That's not very correct. It is when the expression that comes after the colon is a phrase or a clause. That is when it begins with a small letter. But when it's a full sentence, it has to begin with a capital letter. And if what begins the phrase or clause is a proper noun, it also has to begin with a capital letter. Now, a point of caution is this, that you should use colons only when the list does not fit naturally into a sentence construction. Now, for example, the Jacksons' 3 sons are Peter, Sean, and Mike. You don't need to use a colon there. But when you have the Jacksons have 3 sons, so you're introducing those 3 sons, you're listing them, that's where the colon comes in. Now you have another example. The fruit seller had 3 kinds of fruit: bananas, apples, and oranges. So you find the colon introducing the list. So basically, the colon is used to introduce a list. Now, let's move on to the dash. The dash is actually of 3 categories. So the hyphen is also a kind of dash. But basically, we have the M dash, which is longer a little bit than the hyphen, and we have the M dash, which is the longest. For example, for the dash, Bob was tired, exhausted, really, but knew he could not rest. So you have that there. Another point of caution is this: the dash does not come at the bottom. The dash is at the middle. All right, whether it's the M dash or the N dash or the hyphen, which is also a kind of dash, does not come at the bottom between 2 words. It comes at the middle between 2 words. So when you have a symbol coming at the bottom between 2 words, that's not actually a dash, that is an underscore. So don't mistake an underscore for a dash. Now, we also have another temporary pause, which is the hyphen. Like I mentioned, the hyphen is smaller than the dash, is shorter than the dash. The hyphen is a punctuation mark used to join words and to separate syllables of a single word. So the hyphen is used to join 2 words together. It is also used to separate syllables of a single word. The hyphen is like you have 3/5 full of glass or 65. So you have hyphen between 3 and 5. You have hyphen there between 60, and 5. So the hyphen is used to join two words. Now, take note of this, that the use of hyphens is called hyphenation. The hyphen should not be confused with dashes, like I mentioned, but it's a kind of dash. So you have basically the two dashes, the M dash and the M dash. The hyphen is the shortest of them all. All right, though it's not conventionally called a dash, but it's a kind of dash. So the M dash and the M dash are longer than the hyphen. All right. So the hyphen is also used to join two or more words together before a noun. So those two or more words that come before a noun joined by a hyphen are called compound adjectives. Now, you have another punctuation mark, another kind of temporary punctuation mark, which is a parenthesis. The parenthesis is also called round bracket in some clients. The parentheses are the marks of punctuation that set off unrelated words, phrases, or clauses that do not change the meaning of the sentence when omitted. So parentheses are used in pairs. So when you put words in parentheses, it does not change the meaning of the expression before the parentheses. Then you have the brackets in the US. We just simply call them brackets. But in the UK, we call them square brackets. The bracket is not the same as parentheses, because while the bracket is squared, parenthesis is rounded. So the bracket shows that something has been added or omitted from a quotation or cited sentences. The material within the bracket is also often an explanation or a comment on something in the original quotation. So when do we use a bracket? The brackets are used when a writer wants to explain or comment on something in a quotation. For example, a meal at that restaurant will cost you $100. So $100 in the past was equivalent to like 90 euros. So put 90 euros in square brackets. So that's an example of a usage. Then you have the braces. The braces is not the same as the parentheses, it's not the same as a square bracket. So the braces is actually a term that's common in the UK and the US. Now, in other climes, they may give other names to it, but basically, as the symbol of the braces is also used for enclosure. Then we have the apostrophe. Basically, the apostrophe is used for contractions of words to join two words together. For example, it's raining outside. So the two words joined together there, it's and is combined as its. So the apostrophe actually omits I in is and bring those two words together as one. So they have been contracted. I'll be there. I and will are contracted with the help of the apostrophe. See there. I haven't met him before. You see that the apostrophe is there to omit O from not. I haven't. Haven't there is a contraction of have not. I have not met him before. So the apostrophe helps us there to contract have and not together. The apostrophe is also used to show possession. For example, John's friends are visiting at noon. So with the use of the apostrophe there, it shows that the friends are John's or friends of John. Now we have another punctuation mark, another temporary punctuation mark, which is called the quotation mark. Quotation marks, for example, now basically quotation marks are used to for quotation, to quote expressions, or for direct speech. For example, I think I am going to be sick, so it's quoted. Quoted. Now the quotation mark can be double or single. It's a matter of choice. You can choose to use the double quotation marks or single, but the point of caution is this. When you open with a double, you must also close with a double. When you open with a single, you must also close with a single. But when you can put a period inside of a quotation, inside a sentence, or at the end of a sentence before you close the quotation. So a period can be inside a quotation mark when the expression is a statement. For example, I think I'm going to be sick. So that's a statement. So you end with a full stop, and then the quotation is there. I shouldn't have eaten those strawberries. So you have a comma there. Thoughts, Jonathan. So the comma is within the quotation marks, not outside. So take note of that. Who goes there? It's a question. So because a question must end with a question before the quotation mark is put there. Who goes there? Said the sentry. So there you find a question mark inside the quotation mark. You're losing speed. You also find an exclamation mark inside the quotation mark. We're losing speed, screamed the captain. So you find exclamation point or exclamation mark inside the quotation marks. And then we have the last one here, the ellipses. But I want to emphasize that the ellipses must be 3 dots, not 2, not 4, not 5. So you don't just put dash to show that there's a long continuation. That's not correct. So it must be 3 dots. If it's 2 dots, it's wrong. If it's 4 dots, it's wrong. If it's 5 dots, it's wrong. It has to be 3 dots. So the ellipsis is a series of 3 dots. Its main function is to show that something has been omitted from a passage of text. So now the ellipsis replaces the omitted text or omitted words, omitted expression. So when we use the ellipsis, we use the ellipsis to show that you have omitted something from a sentence. So take note. We want to do this to shorten a quotation or simply to omit unimportant material. For example, if you are quoting something and you find some materials inside, some elements or expressions are not that you don't actually need, that you feel are not relevant, you can use the ellipses in place of those expressions. For example, Wilson writes that the benefits of public transit include cleaner air, less congested roadways, and then you have the ellipsis there, which means something is omitted, something that may not be relevant in this context. So take it again. Wilson writes that the benefits of public transit include cleaner air, less congested roadways, reduced carbon emission. So that is my package, the size of my package for this lesson. I believe you've had a wonderful time in this voyage going through the punctuation marks, definition of the punctuation marks, the categories of punctuation marks, and the usages. So, wanted to have a mastery of these punctuation marks and begin to apply them correctly. Hope to see you in my next class.